This is Glenn Hauser with World of Radio, 2239. World of Radio is a listener-supported public service program about communications around the world, primarily shortwave. On this edition, recorded April 18th, Abu Dhabi, Antarctica, Australia, Canada, Canary Islands, China, Congo DR, Denmark, India, Indonesia, Korea South, Mali, Mexico, Myanmar, Netherlands, Papua New Guinea, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Ukraine, UK, USA, Vanuatu, Western Sahara, and the propagation outlook. Standard disclaimer. From Paris, France, Joe, F5NFB says, received at 2234 UT, April 13th, from Paris on 6290 Abu Dhabi Radio. Probably a pirate radio station from Europe, probably from Holland. The presenter confirms the name. His hoarse, aged voice is unmissable. Country music, rock, Edith Piaf. The entire 60s and 70s repertoire is covered. I'm very interested in any contact info or location. Yes, this week we're filing this at the beginning of the alphabet under Abu Dhabi Naan. Some replies. Ron Howard in California says, according to HF Underground, it was formerly known as Black Bandit Radio. Alan Pennington says, according to UKDX's Shortwave DX blog, Radio Abu Dhabi, also known as Johnny Tobacco, Black Bandit, and Triple L. Kari Kallio in Finland says, alias Johnny Tobacco using many names. Characteristic of the speaker is a hoarse voice, probably due to smoking. I continue to check for LRA 36 Antarctica every Saturday. We've had no further word about any schedule changes. However, on April 13th, they were already on the air at 21:45 when I tuned in, and they were no longer audible at 23:40. I'm not sure if faded out or off the air, so we're not certain about the exact schedule and whether it's still only on Saturday. That's best heard via remotes in Argentina or even better, Brazil. 15475.98, reduced carrier USB. And now filed under Australia and NON, I heard from Adrian Peterson in late March. I'm in the process of unloading all of my activity and events associated with Adventist World Radio. It has taken a year to do so. The date for my retirement from AWR is April 26th, and guess why? I will celebrate 93 on that date. So our best wishes to Adrian Peterson in Indiana, our fellow DX program colleague. That is, of course, Wavescan, aired 36 times a week on WRMI and elsewhere. But there's more concerning Adrian Peterson. He has amassed a huge QSL collection, not only his own, but donated by others or family members. The Australian Radio DX Club has been reporting on a project to acquire that huge QSL collection. Here's what John O'Wright said about it in Australian DX News. Great news about Adrian Peterson's QSLs. Sam Dillon and Martin Hadlow have a positive result. The shipment from Indianapolis will go directly to Canberra for all-important scanning of the QSLs, as well as his father's cards and letters from the 1920s. The Australian Radio DX Club is sponsor for this to happen. Scanners in Canberra will do the job better and faster. And these QSLs will be online so anyone can look at the collection from anywhere in the world. The physical QSLs go into the archives in Canberra, not to be split up and sold to collectors. This will save me having to scan tens of thousands of cards and letters, and Sam doing an Excel spreadsheet for every QSL entry, and avoids outlaying substantial funds for equipment to do the job. The shipment from USA to Canberra will cover at a cost of $3,500. The organization in Canberra is abbreviated HFSA. Not clear what that stands for. They have the details to get the shipment to Canberra. Googling it around, the closest I can come to HFSA in Canberra is something called Healthy Food Systems Australia, which seems unlikely to be involved in scanning QSLs. Via BCDX, we have the A24 scheduled in English for Reach Beyond Australia. That is the successor to HCJB. It's rather convoluted, and I expect all of it will be preaching of some sort. But for those interested, here we go. On days 3, 4, and 5 at 09:45 to 10, 9580. On day 3 only, at 12:30 to 13, 11900. And the rest are on 15460. 12:30 to 13 on day 1, 13:15 to 13:30 on days 2, 4, 5, and 6, and 13:45 to 1400 every day. I assume that day 1 means Sunday and so forth. Some weeks ago, CBC Radio-Canada was starting to lay off people in anticipation of a significant budget cut. But now via Gerald T. Pollard, we have a CBC News story of April 16th. Federal budget boosts funding for CBC Radio-Canada. Executives say significant job cuts are no longer needed. It was facing hundreds of layoffs amid the projected budget shortfall. In the 2024 and 25 federal budget, an additional $42 megadollars had been allocated for news and entertainment programming, which CBC Radio-Canada President and CEO Catherine Tate said is welcome news. We will be able to stabilize our operations, preserve jobs, and continue to invest in programs and services. Last fall, CBC forecast $125 megadollars in financial pressures for the next fiscal year, announcing plans to slash $40 megadollars from its production budget and cut approximately 800 jobs, a 10% reduction, including 250 each from CBC English and Radio-Canada in French. John Welsh says, WRMI has been playing my program Canadian Content Radio on 7730, parallel usual 9395 at 0100 UT Fridays. I've had reports from within North America. It's just barely audible here in central Ontario. Manuel Mendez from northwest Iberia has spent another period in the Canary Islands, 6 to 15 April, and tells us about the local stations there, the only ones currently active in the Canaries, as heard at Tenerife. They're Radio Nacional de España, Radio 1 on 576, 621, Radio 5 on 720, 747, COPE on 837 and 882, and Radio Club de Tenerife on 1179. Takahito Akabayashi in Japan says, the Chinese service, CRI, Voice of the South China Sea, has added a new frequency. It's now at 09 to 10 UT on 9880 and 11895 from the Nanning 954 transmitter site. Also, here's the A24 schedule on shortwave of China National Radio, CNR 5, Cross Strait Radio, or Voice of Tai-Hai, that is aimed at Taiwan. 2055 to 2300 on 7385. 2055 to midnight UT 9665 and 5925. At 23 until 09, 11935. That is the same frequency as that noise from Saudi Arabia. At midnight to 10, 9685 and 11620. At 09 to 1705, 7385. And at 10 to 1705, 9665 and 5925. All are 163 degrees from the Beijing Dodian transmitter site. On April 18th, Ron Howard in California was hearing some of those, 11935 until 09, with that interference, as if it were radar, but it's really that noise from Saudi Arabia, I think. And past 09 UT, it continued on 9685 and 11620. Ron Howard was also hearing these on April 13th, before and after 09 UT. The Chinese name is Tai-Hai Jishun, meaning Voice of the Taiwan Strait. Mostly nonstop, easy listening, pop Chinese songs. Enjoyable listening, he says. Dan Robinson keeps in touch with the missionaries running Radio Kahuzi in DR Congo. He says it's been several years since it has been on shortwave amid reorganization in the DRC. Their newsletter indicates the long road to resuming shortwave may be coming to an end. It says our ministry in Bukavu continues daily with improved FM and shortwave, reaching the local population. Christian programming, familiar voices our listeners have come to love over the past 32 years. Most Christian organizations and churches use internet streaming to reach a larger audience, and our future plan is also streaming Radio Kahuzi directly from Bukavu, in French, Swahili, and many other dialects to Bukavu and beyond. Dan says it's unclear from this whether it is already on the air on shortwave. There have been no reports of it lately. So Dan emailed them and got this response. Greetings from Bradenton, that would be Florida. Kathy and I are recuperated and working with our team to upgrade our systems, including shortwave, as technical problems get worked out for good quality broadcasts. We are making changes to our shortwave antenna, and we'll keep you posted when the testing is ready to begin. So, from this, it's not yet back on shortwave, but Dan says, I think we can still have hope that we may be able to hear them again in coming months. It was a superb verifier of reception reports and was on 6210.20, a quite consistent frequency, heard on a daily basis via European remote, such as in Switzerland, in the hour or so before Kahoozie signed off, somewhere in the range from 1815 to 1830. It was frequently mistaken by Euro-pirate listeners as a pirate, and at times the radio Kahoozie signal was so good it scored S5 to S7 levels before signing off. Denmark, Sean Welsh in central Ontario says, pleasantly surprised to hear World Music Radio on 25,800 kilohertz. April 13th at 1537 UT, a nice mix of reggae-style music, a very low signal but good, solid audio. Mike Cooper forwards a story from TheGuardian.com of April 10th. BBC to split India operations following raids. A decision to set up independent collective newsroom comes after BBC offices in Delhi and Mumbai were raided by tax authorities in 2023. The story goes in considerable detail, but it will split its operations into two separate companies. It's forming an independent Indian-owned company called The Collective Newsroom, which would produce content for the Corp's 6 regional channels which broadcast in Indian languages, including Hindi and Punjabi. BBC has applied to have a 26% stake in Collective Newsroom, but it will be largely independent from the broadcaster in order to comply with strict laws brought in by the government of Prime Minister Modi, which have targeted companies that receive funding from abroad. The raids came after the BBC aired a documentary examining Modi's role in Delhi communal riots that took place when he was Chief Minister of the state of Gujarat. The Indian government condemned the documentary and invoked emergency laws to ban any clips or footage of the docu being shared, despite it only being aired in the UK. Upon Asilomar State Beach, California, Ron Howard reports on the content of the English Hour from Voice of Indonesia, heard direct via the Palangkaraya relay on 3325. April 17th, including a commentary at 1312 on the Middle East. Today in History at 1316. Indonesian Wonders at 1329. Let's Speak Bahasa Indonesia at 1335. Today's topic is the word wow. And at 1346, Music Corner. Ron Howard also reports, as of April 18th, I believe RRI Nabiri on 7289.93 has gone silent again since the end of Ramadan. I've not heard them during random monitoring from 0815 UT. Via WWDXC and BCDX, here's the 824 complete English schedule for KBS World Radio South Korea. I believe all these transmissions are direct. To Europe at 15 to 17 on 9515 and 22 to 23 on 11810. To North America at 13 to 14 on 15575. To South America 10 to 11 on 9570. To Southeast Asia at 08 to 1030 on 9770. 13 to 14 on 9570. And 16 to 17 on 9640. And to India 14 to 16 on 9785. My monitoring of Mali this week almost every night between 06 and 07 UT on 5995. On April 13th, it was coming in well with some strumming and music. The noise blob was back on April 15th. On April 16th, music modulation again. And on April 18th, heard in French. This the following story from AP would not affect that station, since it is the government's own broadcaster. But Ricky Long forwards this. In a deepening crackdown, Mali's ruling junta banned the media from reporting on activities of political parties and associations, a day after suspending all political activities in the country until further notice. The order issued by Mali's High Authority for Communication was distributed on social media. The notice said it applied to all forms of media, including TV, radio, online, and print newspapers. And that went out on April 12th. Copper thieves silence Mexican radio station, XEGL in Navojoa, Sonora. From El Sol de Hermosillo on March 30th by Guillermo Frescas, via Steve Witt of Medium Wave Circle and translated by Krista Brunstrom of the Arctic Radio Club. It had been in operation for more than 80 years. Its Facebook page urged authorities to apprehend the culprits. 12:70 a.m. went off the air as a consequence of unknown persons vandalizing its installations and stealing high-tension electrical wires. The transmitting station is in an area where there is supposed to be a strong police presence, they said on Facebook. The station also said, If it was a simple theft of electrical cables, how is it possible that recycling companies or metal scrapyards can buy copper without checking where it came from? Is there a connection between the police authorities and the companies buying copper without checking origin? Via medium, short, and very short waves, World of Radio 2239, a non-commercial service, as is our website, worldofradio.com. Our thanks this week for financial support from John Lutz, N9JL in Shorewood, Illinois. We sent a check to Glenn Hauser, P.O. Box 1684, ENID OK 73702. One may also contribute via PayPal, not necessarily in U.S. funds, to WORADIO@yahoo.com. Via BCDX, Sarat Virakun in Sri Lanka reports on April 9th about Myanmar. Tazin Radio has been silent on shortwave since April 7th. It seems the transmitter at Pien U Luen is having a bit of trouble. I did catch them on 639 medium wave at 13 UT, mingling with a Thai station. Tazin Radio is part of the Myawaddy Communication Center, owned by the military in Myanmar, financed by Myanmar Economic Holdings Limited, MEHL, which is a conglomerate owned by the military. Ari Kallio in Finland reports on April 15th about the Netherlands. Radio Delta has changed its broadcasting schedule. According to its website, we'll be back on the waves as soon as possible, Sundays at 04 to 08 on 6110, and at 08 to 21 UT on 9800. See the broadcast schedule at radiodelta.am. It seems that Radio Vanuatu also considers itself a broadcaster for Papua New Guinea, or part of it. Reinhard says on April 15th, listening to Radio Vanuatu, news about a quake in PNG, 6.5 magnitude. At 0820, I checked the former PNG frequencies of NBC, and, as expected, no activity. Nor on 7325, which used to be One Talk Radio Light. Anyhow, he was having unusually good reception of Radio Vanuatu on 7260, April 15th from 0610 to 0745, with island pop music, Pacific Area Update, pop songs in English, a PSA about a national referendum, news and sports but no weather in Bislama, and some pop songs in English. Volodya Somony forwards a story originating with Kiev Post but filed here under Russia. Ukraine strikes radar station in Russia. A $100 megadollar radar monitoring station, monitoring the sky 700 kilometers deep into Ukrainian territory, was targeted inside Russia by 7 kamikaze drones. This story was dated April 16th. From the description, it sounds like an over-the-horizon radar, probably using shortwave, so there may be less of that noise to be heard. The Russians now have one less modernized Nebo-U complex. It helped Russian troops detect Ukrainian weapons and supported bombers attacking Ukrainian border settlements with guided aerial bombs. This marks the second Nebo-U complex destroyed by the 13th Main Directorate of Military Counterintelligence of the SBU, Ukrainian Security Service. The first was destroyed in Russia's Belgorod region, and also in March, the Special Operation Forces announced successful destruction of the Zhitel Russian electronic warfare complex in the Zaporizhia region. After a week or so of carrying Republic of Yemen radio with clear modulation on 11935, by April 14th, Saudi Arabia's transmitter there was again radiating a huge, horrible roar once again. And also on the 16th and 18th of April, when checked after 15 UT, but it's on the air very long hours. Haywire again. Could there be two different transmitters? But why in the world would they let it transmit for long hours, for days or months, in such a condition? The following via BCDX. With several conflicts and wars going on, we've recently monitored a massive increase in HF activity, with many new frequencies and stations, says Armada International from Bangkok, Thailand, one of the world's leading and most respected defense publications in January 2024. This is from www.armadainternational.com. Available SATCOM bandwidth is under commercial pressure and at risk from jamming and cyber attack, as the Ukraine war has shown. HF has established itself as a reliable long-range communications protocol with significant military utility. HF provides intercontinental ranges, but its waveforms can be comparatively difficult to jam. Moreover, HF frequencies are free to use and do not suffer the congestion of some SATCOM bandwidths. As we plan redundancy in communication in military organizations, HF is often a contingency method to command and control troops on the ground. This enables warfighters to receive their orders in emergency situations, especially when internet, cellular, or SATCOM are not an option. Includes with somewhat cryptic abbreviations, at least for us, but I'll read them. HFDL:ZAN from Krasnoyarsk, that's in Russia, for several years now, last monitored on 7 April 2017. Very active again is Muhurok, MUHURROQ, now on these frequencies: 2, 986, 5, 544, 6, 646, 8, 885, 10, 030, 13, 312, 17, 967, and 21, 982 kilohertz. Last week I gave the BBC World Service schedule on shortwave to Africa, what's left of it, and here's the rest of it to a few other targets which remain. And all of these are daily. Midnight to 02 GMT, 9510 and 11955. 12 to 13, 15295 and 17790. 13 to 14, 11870 and 15295. These are all via Oman except for 9510 Uzbekistan. Then to Southeast Asia, all via Philippines. 10 to 12 on 9410, 22 to 23, 9440, and 23 to midnight, 11825. And a couple of DRM broadcasts to Europe at 05 to 06, 5875 Wolverton. And to South Asia, 08 to 09, 15185 Uzbekistan, and 21660 Oman. That's all, folks. I recently reported a hyperbeacon on the ISM band, 13563.5, giving the call RQ over and over in CW. I've since figured out what it probably is, although it's still not in the listings, because Bill Hensel, AA0RQ in Pine, Colorado, is one of the active contributors to the listings at LWCA. You see, RQ is part of its ham call sign. Thus, I think it's probably the same as PCO for Pine, Colorado, which I'd also heard previously on that frequency. He even sent me an unsolicited QSL for PCO after I mentioned it on World of Radio some time ago, and now I hope he will do the same for RQ. Now here's another of those very low-power beacons I was able to pull in and identify. AN as in Alpha November, on about 13563, April 10th at 2220. That is on the LWCA Hyper list as in Somerton, Arizona, SOMERTON, which is a suburb of Yuma in the southwest corner. From HFCC via BCDX, here's the 824 schedule of Voice of America in English to Africa on shortwave. Well, it's really too complex with changes about every half hour or 1 hour in segments, but I'll point out the transmitter sites for the frequencies most in use. Botswana primarily on 4930, 5925, and 6080, and 15580, and 6195. By the way, 15580 is scheduled between 21 and 22 UT, along with 6195, so that means we can still hear music time in Africa, at least via Botswana, if not Greenville, 11720, during this season. And that's on Fridays with other music programs other days of the week. The São Tomé side is listed on 4960 and 6080 at times other than Botswana, although I seem to have seen a report somewhere that 4960 has been missing. Wolverton is on 7375 and 15140, the only Greenville transmission on 17530 between 1730 and 19 UT. Full of other special VOA programs in English. South Sudan in Focus, that's for Sudan, Monday through Friday at 1630 to 17, with 11910 Botswana, 13590 UAE, and 15660 Lampertheim, Germany. And then there's Learning English to South Asia, Saturday and Sunday at 1130 to 12, on 9345 Thailand, 11700 Tinian, and 12030 Thailand. A while ago I picked up WCGO 1590 Evanston, Illinois, as in Chicago, in Spanish as Ambiente Clásico, but it's also in Russian and some other languages, and I was hoping there would be a schedule of exactly what's on when. Carl D. Forth in Chicago wrote an article about it for IRCADX Monitor. He says there are several schedules online, but each one I found was out of date or not accurate. WCGO's schedule is not carved in stone and seems to vary a little day by day. I listened during the week in late March, and this is what I heard. Starting early in the day, it is Korean all morning. Then from 12 to 4 p.m. Central, it's Spanish Ambiente Clásico Radio, mostly pop songs, kind of a 1970s feel, even playing some English language oldies. Next, it's Russian NVC Radio, starting at 4 p.m. Central. This ran for 4 hours, but I think earlier it was a 3-hour program. I've noticed on some of the other time-brokered stations, a program presenter will buy a shorter time period on the broadcast station, then try to drive listeners to stream a longer program online. At 8 p.m. Central, it's back to Spanish language Ambiente Clásico Radio for the rest of the evening. At midnight local time, into English language multi-format network, a variety of recorded programs from Talking Pets, that is, a discussion of pets, not pets speaking, and Rabbi and the Reverend, just after midnight. I've also heard segments of political talk that were not identified. One recent Friday night, I heard an open carrier for the entire post-midnight period. They do ID in English and mention W240EH, 95.9 FM, Evanston, Chicago. Are no Tunisian program scheduled, but it has been DX'd from Tunisia recently. WCGO transmitter site's 4 towers are wedged into a piece of land in Skokie, between McCormick Boulevard, the CTA Yellow Line, and the Northside Metropolitan Water Reclamation Plant. Via Mike Sandburn, IRCA DX Monitor, this from RadioInsight.com, dated April 9th. The latest on Odyssey's new owners and a potential Cumulus Media combination. That is a merger between 2 of the largest group station owners in the U.S., AUD-ACY and CUMU-LUS. Financing of the whole thing is really too complicated to go into, but it says, should a merger of Odyssey and Cumulus eventually come together, the biggest thing to note is there is less overlap between the companies than you might think. I mentioned Radio Vanuatu earlier under Papua New Guinea Non, but here's another report from Marshall Reel in Damascus, Maryland. April 13th at 10:59, Saturday 7260, and sign off and playing their national anthem. Here's why I've not heard a head on 710 lately. From Canary Islands, Manuel Mendes reports that the Moroccan station at LIU in Western Sahara on 7/11 has been off the air between April 7th and 14th. The propagation outlook from SWPC issued April 15th. ANKNC is peaking at 10 and 3, May 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Otherwise, 5 and 2 or 8 and 3 through May 11th. Solar flux has exceeded 200 but was predicted to drop from 180 April 17th to 120 April 29th, and back up to 175 by May 11th. With many thanks to all our stations and contributors. Hoping you'll hear me again next week. Glenn Hauser here, concluding World of Radio 2239 with a standard disclaimer.